The cold Boston morning wrapped the city in a quiet gray, the kind of silence that made hospital corridors feel even more solemn. At St. Jude's Children's Hospital, the usual bustle of nurses and beeping machines moved with soft urgency. But something was different today. The front entrance was discreetly cleared. A convoy of black sedans pulled up silently. No fanfare, no press. Just the shifting of coats and whispers among hospital staff as a small, distinguished group entered. At the center of it walked a man in simple white robes, his head slightly bowed, his eyes calm but unreadable. Pope Leo XIV, the Supreme Pontiff, the Vicar of Christ. Yet here he moved not like a figure of global authority, but like someone searching for something deeper. His steps echoed with quiet purpose as he was led by Sister Anne through the pediatric oncology wing. If stories of compassion and human connection move you, don't forget to subscribe for more heart-touching true stories. These moments, small, unseen, yet deeply human, remind us of something larger. Pope Leo XIV was unlike any of his predecessors. At 71, he carried the weight of the Church with humility and quiet reform. He'd refused the papal palace, lived modestly, and was known to slip away from security to visit shelters or kneel beside refugees. But this visit wasn't in any official calendar. There were no cameras, no cardinals, only Sister Anne knew why he had come. Weeks earlier, she had written directly to the Vatican. A letter, handwritten, trembling with emotion. She hadn't expected a reply. She certainly hadn't expected this. As they walked, Pope Leo listened carefully. Sister Anne spoke of Emily Sanders, a 9-year-old girl who had been fighting leukemia for over 2 years. She was in palliative care now. The doctors had done all they could. What remained was time, maybe days, maybe less. But Emily, despite her weakening body, remained a beacon of light on the floor. Her laughter echoed louder than the machines. Her drawings covered the walls. Her faith had touched every nurse, every janitor, every parent who passed by. She told me, Sister Anne whispered, that if she ever met the Pope, she'd ask him if God had freckles. Pope Leo smiled gently. Does he? She says yes, because he must have created them just for fun. He didn't speak for a while after that, just nodded, absorbing the weight of the moment. They stopped outside room 214. The door was decorated with cut-out stars and angels, a handmade sign, Emily's Sky. Inside, Emily was lying back in her bed, her chest rising gently beneath a fleece blanket. Her mother, Julia, sat beside her, holding her hand and reading softly from a children's Bible. The light was dim, the atmosphere sacred in its quiet. They didn't know yet who was about to walk through their door. Behind them, the hospital continued its rhythms. Nurses checking IVs, parents pacing silently, children sleeping through the hum of machines. But in room 214, something extraordinary was about to begin. Pope Leo paused, his hand on the doorframe. He closed his eyes briefly, perhaps in prayer, perhaps in gathering strength. Then, without another word, he stepped inside. Emily's room was quiet. The only sound a soft hum from the oxygen monitor and the turning of thin pages in the Bible her mother held. Julia looked up, startled, as the door opened slowly. A man stepped inside, tall, older, with a gentle face and eyes that held both sorrow and peace. She didn't recognize him at first. Neither did Emily. "Oh, hello," Emily said softly, her voice thin but cheerful. "Are you another doctor?" Pope Leo smiled, not correcting her. "Not quite. May I come in?" Julia stood quickly, unsure of what to do. There was something dignified, even sacred, about the man before her. She glanced at the nun behind him and then at Emily. Her daughter nodded with an innocent grin. "Sure. Sit anywhere you like." Back in the hallway, Vatican aides had tried to remain calm. The Pope had made it clear this visit would not be rushed, no media, no photographers. Even the hospital administration had been caught off guard. The security team had only been told hours before. Many were still trying to process it. The most powerful religious figure in the world had walked into a Boston hospital without ceremony, without entourage. He had insisted on changing out of his formal robes, wearing instead a simple white cassock with no gold, no ring, no signs of authority. "I'm not here as a pope," he had said. "I'm here as a man who believes." While others scrambled behind the scenes, Pope Leo was fully present in room 214. He took a seat beside Emily's bed, adjusting the small wooden chair quietly so as not to disturb her. Emily looked him over. "You look important, like someone from a painting." He chuckled gently. I've been in a few. She tilted her head. Are you a priest? Yes, he answered. My name is Leo. She blinked. Like the lion? Exactly like the lion. She giggled, which brought a slight cough. Julia moved to help, but Emily waved her off. I'm okay, Mom. The Pope leaned forward, his tone warm. Sister Anne told me you like drawing angels. Emily nodded. They help me think about heaven. It's not scary if you imagine it's full of art supplies and clouds you can paint on. He smiled. That sounds beautiful. It is, she said simply. Outside, Sister Anne stood near the doorway, her hands folded tightly. She had never seen anything like this. Not just the Pope's visit, but the way he entered that room, as though he were stepping into a sacred space not his own. She watched Julia's expression soften, the disbelief slowly giving way to something deeper, recognition. Inside, Emily began telling Leo about her drawings, her dreams, her theories about God. I think God laughs a lot, that's why we laugh, and he probably has freckles. Just because. Some things don't need a reason. Leo didn't interrupt. He just listened, fully, as though nothing else in the world existed outside this conversation. Julia sat quietly, watching her daughter come alive in this moment. For days now, Emily had been drifting between wakefulness and fatigue, her energy fading, but now she was animated, her cheeks flushed with joy. No one had expected the Pope to come, but now that he was here, it felt like he had always been meant to walk through that door. No one asked questions. No one demanded answers. There was only a strange, quiet sense that something holy was unfolding, and it had only just begun. The room felt like it had shrunk, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Pope Leo sat still, elbows resting gently on his knees, hands clasped together, his gaze fixed entirely on Emily. She was small under the blanket, her hair thinning, her lips dry, but her eyes were bright, steady, curious. You know, she said, I always thought if I met someone important I'd feel nervous, but you're not scary. I'm glad, Leo said softly. Important people should never make others feel small. She smiled at that. I tell my mom that all the time. Julia chuckled quietly, sitting near the window. Her eyes were misty, but her smile was genuine. For the first time in days, Emily was truly present, truly herself. Do you talk to God? Emily asked. Every day, the Pope answered. Does he talk back? He considered the question for a moment. Not with words, but sometimes I feel things I can't explain. A nudge, a warmth, a silence that says more than sound. Emily nodded. I think I know what you mean. There was a pause, not awkward but full of all the things they weren't saying out loud, full of understanding that didn't need to be spoken. Can I ask you something? Emily said, her tone more serious now. Of course. Will you pray with me? Leo smiled gently. Yes. What would you like us to pray for? Not for me, she said. Pray for my mom. She's scared. I don't want her to be. Julia pressed a hand to her mouth, a quiet sob escaping. The Pope reached out and took Emily's hand. It was tiny, fragile, like holding a bird. He closed his eyes. God of mercy, he began, his voice deep and steady. We thank you for this brave child, for her heart, her joy, her light. Give peace to her mother, Julia. Let her feel your presence. Let her know she is not alone. Let her see, even in sorrow, that love remains. Emily squeezed his fingers. When the prayer ended, she whispered, Amen. There was a silence after that, peaceful, unhurried, the kind of silence where healing begins, even when the body cannot be saved. Then Leo reached to his head and gently removed his white zucchetto. Without a word, he placed it on Emily's head. It drooped over her ears, far too big, but she laughed. I look like a snowman. You look like someone special, he replied. Because you are. Emily leaned back on her pillow, her hand still in his. I think heaven's gonna be full of laughter. Like, everyone will laugh just because it's so light. I believe you, Leo said, his eyes shining. The nurses in the hallway glanced at one another, wondering how long he'd stay. Surely he had to leave soon, but no one dared knock. No one wanted to break the moment. Julia moved closer, kneeling beside the bed, brushing a curl from Emily's forehead. She looked up at Leo. Thank you, she whispered. You didn't have to, but I did, he said, finishing her sentence gently. And I always would. And still he didn't leave. Time, for a while, had stopped. The world outside continued, but within room 214 something sacred was happening. No one watching could put it into words. No one wanted to. Some things aren't meant to be explained, only remembered. The clock ticked quietly, unnoticed. 2 hours passed, though no one in room 214 seemed aware of time anymore. Pope Leo remained seated beside Emily, his hands now folded in his lap, his face thoughtful. Emily had fallen asleep, her small frame steady in rest, the zucchetto still resting slightly askew on her head. Her breathing was shallow but calm. Julia sat close, her hand still resting lightly on her daughter's arm. She looked over at the Pope with quiet awe. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You already have," he replied, his voice low, "by letting me stay." In the hallway, the Vatican security team remained unusually subdued. No updates had been requested, no plans revised. A silent understanding had settled over everyone involved. The Pope was not to be disturbed. The hospital staff moved carefully, their steps lighter, as if the entire wing had adopted a reverent hush. After a while, Leo reached into his cassock and pulled out a folded paper, aged slightly, handwritten. Julia watched curiously as he unfolded it with care, smoothing the creases with steady fingers. "This was meant to be a blessing," he said, "but it didn't feel right to write it before meeting her. So I waited until I arrived and then I finished it in the hallway." He handed it to Julia. She held it gently, as if it were made of glass. The letter was simple, written in elegant cursive. In it, Pope Leo had called Emily a shepherd of light, someone whose soul radiated more truth than many who lived twice her years. He had written of how her faith had touched him deeply, and that through her he had glimpsed something the Church often forgot: innocent, fearless belief. Julia read it in silence, her tears falling without resistance. The letter was not official. It carried no Vatican seal, but its weight was immeasurable. "I'll give it to her," she whispered. "She already knows," he said, "but one day someone else might need to read it." He stood then slowly, as if his body resisted leaving the space. He looked down at Emily for a long moment. Then he bent forward and kissed her forehead, lightly, gently. At the door, Sister Anne waited, her eyes wet. "She's remarkable," Leo said. Sister Anne nodded. "She changes people, just by being." He touched her shoulder briefly. "Thank you for writing. I needed to be here." As they walked down the corridor, doctors and nurses stepped aside, not out of protocol, but out of quiet respect. No one reached for phones. No one asked for photos. It wasn't that kind of moment. Near the elevator, Leo paused again. "This child," he said quietly to Sister Anne, "has taught me what the Church forgot." "And what's that?" she asked gently. "That holiness isn't found in grand cathedrals or ancient texts. It's found in love that asks for nothing in return." He stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with a soft click. Behind them, the pediatric wing remained silent. For days, no one spoke publicly about what had happened. Even the Vatican made no announcement. Staff at the hospital respected the Pope's wishes for privacy. Emily continued to rest, and the letter remained folded beside her bed, under the small stuffed angel she'd named Grace. But something had shifted. In that small hospital room, a moment had occurred that words couldn't fully capture. A sacred moment, kept quiet, but destined never to be forgotten. 3 weeks later, Emily passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was cradled in her mother's arms, surrounded by soft music, warm blankets, and the quiet hum of machines that would no longer be needed. In her hand was a folded letter, on her head still the Pope's zucchetto. Julia did not call the press. She did not seek attention. But she did visit her parish priest, Father Miguel, a kind man with silver hair and steady hands. She brought the letter with her, unsure of what to do next. He read it twice, wiping his eyes between paragraphs. "This is not just a note," he whispered. "It's a testament." With Julia's permission, he shared it during a Sunday homily, reading every word aloud to a stunned congregation. One parishioner filmed it and uploaded it to a small community page. Within 48 hours, it had spread across continents. People wept watching the video. Headlines appeared: "Pope's secret visit to dying child. Emily's faith moves the world. The letter that changed the Vatican." News agencies scrambled to verify it, but the truth didn't come from the Vatican press office. It came from those who had seen, felt, and now believed. Pope Leo, when asked during a general audience if the story was true, paused. Then he looked directly at the crowd and said, "A child once asked me if God had freckles, and I told her yes, because sometimes God creates things just for joy." The crowd fell silent. He added, There was a girl in Boston. She taught me that holiness is found not in status but in surrender. I call her the Little Shepherd of Boston, and through her I saw heaven more clearly. The impact was immediate. Donations poured into St. Jude's from around the world. A foundation was created in Emily's name to support pediatric palliative care. Her drawings were displayed in a permanent gallery inside the hospital. One hallway was renamed Emily's Sky. But the ripple didn't stop there. Pope Leo launched a new initiative called Children of Light, a global pastoral mission to bring comfort and spiritual presence to terminally ill children. Hospitals in 12 countries began receiving unexpected visitors, nuns, priests, even cardinals, sent to listen, pray, and be present without expectation or fanfare. The Pope had instructed them clearly. Don't preach, just sit, hold hands, learn their names, and if they ask you if God has freckles, say yes. Emily's story continued to inspire letters, art, music, and even a children's book titled God's Freckles, written by a nurse who had cared for her in her final weeks. One cardinal, known for his stoic reserve, was later seen wiping tears during a prayer for the children of the Boston girl. As for Pope Leo, he kept a photo of Emily on his desk, a crayon sketch she'd made of a laughing angel with messy hair and giant freckles. It sat beside his Bible. In the end, what began as an unannounced visit became a quiet revolution in how the Church saw its youngest, most fragile believers, not as symbols of tragedy, but as bearers of pure, sacred faith. If this story moved your heart, subscribe for more powerful stories that renew our faith in humanity. These moments remind us that love in its purest form speaks louder than doctrine and reaches farther than titles.